Paramount's Annihilation opened in a disappointing fourth place at the box office this weekend. How did this much-hyped sci-fi epic end up opening so low? Well, it involves the Terminator, a 2006 James Franco movie, and Gerard Butler? We have the scoop right here on Screen Junkies News. It wasn't long ago that Annihilation was one of 2018's most buzzed-about films. The trippy sci-fi mystery had a rising star at the helm, Ex Machina's Alex Garland, and featured a buzzy cast including Natalie Portman, Oscar Isaac, Tessa Thompson, and Jennifer Jason Leigh. That's why it was so surprising when news broke late last year that Paramount had negotiated for the film to be distributed by Netflix in every country except the US, Canada, and China, precluding a theatrical release for the movie in almost every country worldwide. Director Alex Garland was vocal in his displeasure about this decision, telling Collider, quote, "From my point of view and the collective of the people who made it, it was made to be seen on a big screen." So what happened to Annihilation, and why will most of the world be seeing the film on their televisions instead of the movie screen? According to most report, it boils down to creative differences between director Alex Garland, the film's producer Scott Rudin, and David Ellison, the founder of Skydance Media, which co-financed the film. David Ellison is a Hollywood financier turned producer who has executive produced several movies and has gotten a producer title on 5: Geostorm, Terminator Genisys, Mission Impossible, Rogue Nation, Life, and The Hitman's Bodyguard. David Ellison is also 5 days younger than me, which I definitely don't have a complex about now. He's the son of Larry Ellison, the billionaire co-founder of Oracle Corporation. Now, David Ellison founded Skydance Media in 2010 and raised over $300 million to co-finance films, primarily with Paramount Pictures. Now, in its early stages, when it was known as Skydance Productions, the company co-financed some huge box office successes, among them True Grit, the 4th and 5th Mission Impossible movies, and World War Z. But since 2015, the track record hasn't been as great. Terminator Genisys was an international hit, but still reportedly lost money due to a massive advertising budget. Star Trek Beyond had a massive budget that it struggled to recoup, with a disappointing domestic total, throwing that franchise into turmoil. Life struggled to double its nearly $60 million budget. Last summer's Baywatch was a critical and financial disappointment in the US and again struggled to double its budget, but one movie ended up being a key linchpin for Skydance and David Ellison: last year's Geostorm, the much-delayed Gerard Butler disaster film that grossed an anemic $33 million in North America. Geostorm, the featured directorial debut of Independence Day and Godzilla '98 writer and producer Dean Devlin, was a $120 million budgeted quagmire that required reshoots and incurred costly delays that even a $187 million foreign gross could not save. Multiple reports stated that the film was on track to lose $100 million or more, and it was this failure that reportedly led directly to David Ellison's decision to push back against Annihilation, fearing another costly flop would further hurt Skydance. According to the Hollywood Reporter's account of what happened, Ellison deemed Annihilation too intellectual and too complicated for a general audience. The story went on to say, quote, "With Ellison not wanting to lose money after the poor performances of Geostorm, the billionaire producer is seeking to avoid a worldwide release and hopes that a digital release may be a better fit. The deal calls for Netflix to cover a good chunk of the production budget, which is in the $55 million range. Geostorm, it should be noted, was not a co-production with Paramount. It was co-financed with Warner Brothers and Dean Devlin's Electric Entertainment, which may lead you to wonder why Skydance co-financed it in the first place. Now, it may be due to the fact that prior to founding Skydance, David Ellison was an aspiring actor who was cast alongside James Franco in a 2006 film called Flyboys, which was produced by, you guessed it, Geostorm director Dean Devlin. So yes, it is entirely possible that David Ellison's role as Eddie Beagle in a forgotten James Franco flop from 12 years ago brought us to where we are today. Cut to last summer. Ellison's concerns about Annihilation were raised after a test screening was poorly received by audience. Now, Ellison's proposed solutions reportedly included changes to the ending of the film and adjustments to Natalie Portman's character to make her more sympathetic. Annihilation's producer Scott Rudin stood by director Alex Garland, who refused to make the changes. Rudin, it should be noted, has his own prestige, serving as producer on dozens of films, including Best Picture nominee Lady Bird, The Grand Budapest Hotel, along with most of Wes Anderson's movies, and winning an Oscar as a producer of No Country for Old Men, a Best Picture winner. So, in one corner, you have director Alex Garland and Oscar-winning producer Scott Rudin. In the other, you have executive producer and co-financier David Ellison. And in the middle is Paramount Pictures, a studio that captured less than 5% of 2017's box office market share, lost a massive co-financing deal with China's Huawei Media last November, and just saw their rival studio Warner Brothers take a hit on Blade Runner 2049, a critical sci-fi hit that failed to connect with a wide audience. Now, Paramount recently also sold The Cloverfield Paradox, also to Netflix, to guarantee a profit on that film. So, you have a studio that can't risk losing a financier that doesn't want to risk another costly flop, and a creative team that won't make the changes deemed necessary to make Annihilation more marketable. That brings us to last December, when the international rights to Annihilation were sold to Netflix, with theatrical distribution being limited to North America and China. The promotional budget for the film was also reportedly heavily reduced, and the film opened in fewer theaters than an average wide release, just over 2,000 compared to 3,500 for this weekend's other big release Game Night, and over 4,000 for Disney's Black Panther. Now, it should be noted that Annihilation opened at around $5,400 per theater, the second best per screen number of any wide release last weekend, indicating that the movie could potentially have opened bigger if it had played on more screens. But the true scope of the movie's potential financial success or failure in theaters will never truly be known. So, did Ellison and Paramount make the right move? Many would say that the Netflix deal pushed the film into profitability, which would mean the answer is yes. The movie also earned a cinema score of C, which some will point to as a sign that it would never have clicked with a wide audience. After all, why advocate for the wider release of a movie that audiences put on the same plane as the original 50 Shades of Grey and Zoolander 2? But while a C cinema score is often an indication that a movie was poorly received by a general audience, it's also often indicative of a divisive film, which Annihilation most certainly is, that still turned a tidy profit for the studio or became a cult hit that generated long legs in the home video and cable TV aftermarkets. Some examples of this include AI, Artificial Intelligence, which got a C+ cinema score and generated $235 million worldwide off a budget of $100 million. M. Night Shyamalan's Unbreakable and The Village, which both got a C score, generated over $500 million worldwide off a combined budget of $135 million. The original Cloverfield, which got a C cinema score, made $170 million worldwide off a budget of $25 million. And Darren Aronofsky's Noah, which also received a C cinema score, netted $362 million globally from a budget of $125 million. Other notable movies that got cinema scores in the C range include The Royal Tenenbaums, The Blair Witch Project, Boogie Nights, A History of Violence, Magnolia, The Witch, MacGruber, and The Wolf of Wall Street. All films that were either financial successes or found success following their theatrical runs. Now, there are also cautionary tales like Darren Aronofsky's The Fountain, which generated a C- cinema score and only made $15 million worldwide off a budget of $35 million, a big hit for the studio. Not surprisingly, risk versus potential was the deciding factor in choosing to sell Annihilation to Netflix, but at the likely expense of a relationship between the studio and filmmaker Alex Garland, who told IndieWire in December, quote, "The way I approach these things is with transparency. I say, here's the script. The script is not a pretend script. It's the actual script. Here's some visuals too. The way I see it from that point is that if they agree to make the film, then it becomes like a contract. Importantly, that contract is not open to being broken later. There's a creative agreement if people do have a problem, and that's fine if they do, but the time to express that is early, not late." Now, as the role of producer and financier continue to merge and intermingle in the coming years, and the media landscape continues to evolve, studios will continue to explore avenues to guarantee success and avert risk. There were days when this producer stood up to the studio in an effort to protect both the project and the artist's vision, but those lines are beginning to blur as the media landscape changes radically. And in the case of Annihilation, while the studio and financiers may have won, audiences in most countries lost the chance to experience a singularly unique film on the big screen as the director intended it to be. It's a move that might make sense on a spreadsheet, but its real cost is something only the future will be able to tell. Thanks for watching Screen Junkies News. Until next time, I'm Dan Murrell.